This is how we do it.
I've just decided to switch our Friday schedule to Monday, which means that the test we take each Friday on what we learn during the week will now take place on Monday before we've learned it.
This is how we do it. It's Friday night.
Friday night and the lights are low. Looking out for a place to go.
It's Friday night. It's the most social night of the week. I mean, a couple of lookers like us should be out there enjoying a nightlife.
Everybody's working for the weekend.
Thank God it's Friday!
You wanna be in the show? Come on, let's go.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHEL.
Excellent. One of my very favorite bands of all time, and a perfect song for, according to DJ Shannon, National Radio Day. Spirit of Radio by Rush, just fantastic. Just keep it going, because we should do just a whole show where we're playing this song under me the whole time for 4 hours. Even I might get tired of it. No, probably not, actually. Probably not. How about that lightning storm last night? Did that wake you up? It woke me up, but it was totally worth it. That was just a great little storm. Okay, we got a lot to do today. We got some very interesting guests today, including, of course, CU Physics Professor Paul Beal at 8:30, but we're doing a lot of other stuff. We got Jonathan Rausch coming up in an hour. He's with the Brookings Institution, and he's got a new book that I'm actually holding up if you're watching us live on YouTube right now. If you go to YouTube and type in my name, you'll find us. But this book's called The Constitution of Knowledge, A Defense of Truth. And I don't know, I've been thinking a lot lately about truth and why people believe that what they think they know is true. Especially these days where so much of what people think they know actually isn't true. Anyway, it's going to be a really good conversation. At 8:05, we're going to do something completely different. A gentleman named John Mallett, whose background is in the mortgage industry. And we're going to talk about, this is going to sound like something you'd expect maybe more on a little bit of a more left-leaning broadcast, but we're going to talk a little bit about racial differences in home ownership. And he's got some thoughts on helping to close that gap, but I'm going to look at a lot of data there and talk about what's real and what's not, maybe. And at 9:05, you remember him well. DJ Shannon, you remember him well. Then his conversation with Tucker. And I told him that. And he said, Ross, I'm more relaxed with you. So, and then yesterday we had Army. We had Brigadier General Anthony J. Tata, retired. And today we got Marines. Talking about what's going on. Can you imagine what the Marines are going to say? What Scotty Houston is going to say about the scene in Afghanistan? I'm going to get back to the whole Afghanistan thing in a minute. I want to just talk about something random. Thank you for that last little Neil Peart drum hit at the end. Awesome. Yeah, like I said, you can play that all day long as far as I'm concerned, Shannon. So I caught I've been watching more and more BBC News. They do such a great job with the international stuff, and it's not that they're not biased. They definitely have a left-wing MSM kind of bias, but you get more of an international flavor, and I like seeing what they're talking about. And every once in a while, they pick up stories that you really just don't see here very much, or at least they're not promoted very much. So I actually did end up finding this story on CNN's website, but I didn't see it on CNN. And I just want to share this with you because I dig it. I dig this story. So in the Olympics, in the women's javelin competition, the winner is a Polish woman named Maria Andrzejczyk, and I sure hope I'm pronouncing that right, Maria. Andrejczyk. Andrzejczyk, I think. So, she's 25 years old. She came in second in the Olympics. She got a silver medal. Fantastic. First Olympic medal. And she learned of a child named Milocek Malisa, 8 months old, who needs heart surgery. And it is a heart surgery with a level of complication that there is no place in her country, there's no place in Poland that can do it. This heart surgery has to be done in the United States of America at Stanford. And that is going to cost somewhere around $400,000 that this baby's family does not have. So the family started a GoFundMe, and they raised a little money that way. But Olympic silver medalist Maria Andreychuk announced that she is auctioning off her Olympic silver medal to donate the money to help this 8-month-old baby get life-saving heart surgery. And it turns out that she started the auction at about $50,000 US and ended up closing the auction at $125,000 US, so almost a third of what's required for this baby's medical procedure. And the winner of the auction, buying the silver medal from Maria, is a company called Żabka, which is a supermarket chain in Poland. They are buying her silver medal for $125,000 to help the cause. And after winning the auction, the supermarket chain Żabka announced, and I'm going to quote, "We were moved by the beautiful and extremely noble gesture of our Olympian. Therefore, we decided to support the collection of funds for the sick Milocek," that's the baby's name. "We also decided that the silver medal from Tokyo will remain with Maria, who showed how great she is." So they bought her medal in the auction, and they're leaving the medal with her. And it was an interesting interview that she did on BBC, where she was saying, look, I on the one hand, at first when they said that, I was incredibly ecstatic and grateful, and then I started thinking about it more. And she said, I really don't deserve to have the medal. It's just a thing I did, and I auctioned it, and I'm not even sure I still really want it. And it's nothing negative, right? It's nothing negative about the medal or the Olympics or anything. It's just she didn't feel quite right about it. But I think she'll get over it. And in the meantime, it looks like the baby's gonna have all the money necessary to get that heart surgery at Stanford, California. So there you go. I thought I'd share that with you as just a lovely, lovely story to start your Friday on this National Radio Day. Okay, I wasn't going to talk about Afghanistan in this segment, but I need to talk about a couple of things here quickly. First of all, I'd like to point out that for 4 years, through combinations of policy changes and tirades and insults and just pushing people the way he wanted to go, Donald Trump had this mission of getting NATO and other allies to be less reliant on the United States for their own defense. It was a major mission of Donald Trump's. And he got a little bit of that done. He got some NATO countries to slightly increase their financial contribution to NATO. They weren't really doing all that much more, though, to be responsible for their own defense. In 1 week of incompetence, Joe Biden has done more to cause our allies to think that the United States cannot be relied on than Donald Trump did in 4 years of actually trying to make them believe that. Donald Trump wanted our allies or quasi-allies, wanted our allies, and this is not a criticism of Trump, by the way, okay? He wanted them to think that they shouldn't just rely on the U.S. for everything. Trump is an America First guy, right? Doesn't want to be the world's policeman, and he certainly is very, very, very focused. Trump always was on the cost of being the world's policeman and the world's, defense, and he didn't like it at all, and he did not like the American taxpayer having to fund so much of defense of so many other countries. And he pushed and he pushed and he pushed and he said, do this and do that. And they barely did anything through 4 years of his legitimately trying. And I don't care whether you agree with this policy or not. I'm just saying he tried hard for 4 years and he got very little done when it comes to that. Because at the end, here's what I think. What I think is that those allies believed that Trump represented a very short-term thing, maybe even just one term, which is what ended up happening, and that after Trump, we would get some kind of return to normalcy. And a return to normalcy would mean what the United States relationship has always been with NATO, namely spending too much American taxpayer money and not making them spend more, and relying very, very much on us for their defense. Now, I also want to say this is not all bad. Put aside the finances for a minute. There is upside to the U.S. to have so much of Western Europe in our sphere of influence and aiming to side with us in most things, not just defense, but in other things like trade and UN kind of stuff, right? If they feel like they need us, big picture. So pushing our allies far away is not a great idea, but making them, there's some middle ground between having them completely dependent on us and not associated with us at all. Like I said, Joe Biden has done more in a week to prove to our European allies and perhaps Taiwan, maybe Japan as well, that when they thought if they just could outlast Trump and they would get back to what used to be the previous normal, right? The status quo ante, they thought we'd just get back to that and everything will be fine. And especially we get a Democrat and the U.S. will just keep writing the checks. And it just turns out, and remember, Biden campaigned on that too. Biden campaigned on a competency of returning to normal, of empathy, and of competency. And he blew them all up in a week. Who's going to believe anything Joe Biden says anymore about anything? Everybody now knows. It's not just those of us who didn't vote for him. Everybody now knows that he's an incompetent and a liar and a fool. The Wall Street Journal puts it this way. This was published last night. Remember when candidate Joe Biden said America, quote, needs a leader the world respects? Apparently, President Biden forgot. Of the many consequences of his misbegotten Afghanistan withdrawal, one of the more serious is the way it has damaged America's relationships with its allies, especially in Europe. Afghanistan was an operation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and America's NATO allies have invested significant blood and treasure in the conflict. That includes tens of thousands of troops over 20 years, more than 1,100 of whom were killed, and billions of dollars spent on the military operation and reconstruction effort. This was a fulfillment of their obligations after the September 11th terror attack led to the first invocation of the Mutual Self-Defense Clause in NATO's founding treaty. European allies also have a stake in preventing a nation of nearly 40 million people from collapsing into a failed state that could trigger more mass migration to Europe or become a new breeding ground for terrorism. Yet everything about Mr. Biden's Afghan withdrawal has been a slap to those allies. They didn't want the U.S. to leave, but he did. The botched execution has left them scrambling to airlift out thousands of their citizens and thousands more Afghan translators and others who assisted each nation's war effort. And they go on in this piece to talk in particular about Great Britain. And how Boris Johnson, and then I heard Theresa May talking in Parliament yesterday. They cannot believe what Biden did. Boris Johnson had to wait a day and a half to speak to Joe Biden after requesting a conversation. The Prime Minister of England had to wait a day and a half to talk with Biden. The British are pissed. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has told her Conservative Party that she believes that Biden withdrew, quote, for domestic political reasons. Her potential successor, a guy named Armin Laschet, called the Afghan withdrawal the biggest debacle that NATO has suffered since its founding, and we're standing before an epochal change. And how about this? Taiwan's president warned this week that in light of the U.S. retreat, quote, Taiwan's only option is to grow stronger and become more united, strengthening our determination to protect ourselves. And I would note that that kind of language is inviting an attack from China, in part because China, number one, hates to hear Taiwan talk like that, hates the idea of Taiwan making itself stronger, and perceives American weakness. As I shared with you this op-ed from Global Times the other day, which is a Chinese Communist Party mouthpiece, they said what's going on in Afghanistan proves that America cannot be relied on to defend the people they say they're going to defend. And I think China really believes that. So this is actually Biden's action by spurring Taiwan to care more, to spend more, to do more about their own defense, which is conceptually fine, is nevertheless inviting much more aggression from China. And that's something that could turn into a massive real war. And then here's the other thing. And I just want to say as a caveat, what I'm going to say next is not a comment about the bravery of American fighting men and women. Okay, this is a comment about our generals, but really about our president. The French and the British, let's just focus on the French for a second, are sending their special forces into Kabul to rescue French people and Afghans who helped French troops and get them to safety, while American troops are staying inside the walls of Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul. When is the last time in the history of the human race, or at least the history of the existence of the United States of America, that anyone ever said that the French were behaving more courageously than the Americans? Again, this is not a comment about our military. This is a comment about the feckless dolt who is president of the United States.
KHOW Denver, 630 KHOW. An iHeart radio station. Available everywhere on our free iHeart Radio app. #1 for music, radio, and podcasts.